Good evening, everyone. It is 6 o'clock, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. We've got Commissioner Wilson here. Okay. Mo, I'm going to ask you kindly to do a roll call.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. Commissioner Miller,
Here.
Commissioner Reed is excused, our Curry is excused, and Commissioner Grabman is excused. So Commissioner Maya,
I'm here.
Vice Chair Glazier,
Here.
and Chair Houghton.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
All righto. Thank you very much. Mr. Hastert, any changes to the agenda?
Chair Houghton, no changes to the agenda.
Great. Notices that on Friday, May 10, 2024 at 5 p.m., the Airport Commissioner's Secretary, Mo Graham, duly posted this agenda on the bulletin board at Airport Administration. Item number 3, public comment. This is always my favorite part of the meeting. We only have 2 people from the public this evening. So I hope you have public comments. I do not. Okay. Oh, okay. All right. Mo, do you have any speaker comments? I do not. Okay. And if we do have someone come in from the public, we'll run a timer for each speaker to talk for 3 minutes max, and then we'll keep track of the speaker and their allocated time. And the next item on the agenda is liaison reports. We usually have our city council members from Goleta and Santa Barbara, but neither are here this evening, at least at this
Chair
time.
Houghton, I did receive a call from Councilmember Friedman, who regretted that he wouldn't be able to attend tonight due to conflicts with downtown parking and other issues going on at the city.
Parking's a big issue in the city right now, so thank you very much. Well, and then we're going to move already to item number 5, Airport Director Report. I'd like to call on Director Hastert for the report.
Thank you, Chair Houghton. I don't have a lot for you this evening. I did attend the Visit Santa Barbara general meeting that was held at the Rosewood, a very nice location. I was very impressed with the facility, and I just wanted to report that they gave us a lot of positive mentions here at the airport during their report for their overall year-end numbers. So that was very positive to hear. I also attended the chamber breakfast with a good portion of our staff because we were the sponsor for the chamber breakfast this last time, and that was due to getting out the word about the Delta launch. So we had a lot of airplane stuff all over the place, and Angie did a great job of marketing all of our airport things going on, as well as the Delta launch, and the chamber staff really went above and beyond to dress in airplane costumes and all kinds of fun stuff. So it was a really fun event.
Very
and then following along with that, the Delta construction is actually going very well, and don't anticipate any major issues with the June 7th launch. We will have some information coming out soon about celebratory inaugural flight type things in the terminal that some of you will most likely be invited to. And so we're looking forward to that. But if you go into the terminal today, you can actually see their kiosks already all set up, their signage all in there. So it's happening, and it's happening soon.
Good.
I don't know all the details yet, but I think Mo has been successful in working with one of our tenants. We are the host of our citywide airport, or excuse me, not airport, citywide managers and supervisors meeting. And traditionally, we would have that in some city facility somewhere. I think we're actually going to be able to bring all of them out to the airport in a nice big hangar with some airplanes around us to show off what we do here at the airport. And we are hopeful to have Kevin Shore, our air service person, consultant, give a presentation to the city staff about what we do. If that doesn't work out, we're looking for other alternatives, or maybe even a second speaker. So if you know of anybody locally with an aviation story to tell, please run that past me, and I'd be happy to see if it's something we want to include. And that the audience, again, is all of the supervisors and managers for the entire city.
Boy.
And will that hangar be one of the historic?
Not that soon, unfortunately, no. Maybe at some time in the future. And then I just want to give you an update. The General Western Aero Hangars item did go to City Council. Their action was very similar to the Commission action, which is to recommend proceeding with the public outreach and funding opportunities in hopes to restore both hangars in place.
Wonderful.
And then I only have two other items. One is we are also in a partnership with UCSB Athletics for some space in the terminal for advertising, and then advertising of the airport on the field for some of their athletics. And so we were invited to participate in one of the baseball games, and they really went above and beyond to acknowledge our partnership there at the baseball field. And it was a really great game that they won as well. And then just last but not least, I attended a Southern California Airport Managers Roundtable in Palm Springs. It was hosted by the Palm Springs Airport. And it was really interesting. I did a tour of their signature aviation facility to compare how that compares to here, as well as went behind the scenes to see all of their woes with their terminal for an airport much like ours that has seen exponential growth in passengers and size of aircraft and a lot of the same problems we have on a bigger scale. So it was very interesting to see how they're dealing with some of those issues because we're facing similar issues. And I've only been to that was the only time I've ever been inside the secure part of the airport, and I was amazed at how nice it is with the outdoor area. So as we look at future plans way in the distance past terminal improvement, maybe that's something we could incorporate here as well as a very nice element. That's all I have for the director's report.
I have to thank you very much, Director Hastert. I must say we get to Palm Springs and the Coachella Valley quite a bit, and I kind of look at Palm Springs as our model because it's another tourism-related area with some light industry and educational facilities with UC Riverside and Cal State University San Bernardino. But they have one thing that we don't, so they can call themselves an international airport, is they get a flight a day from British Columbia, I believe, and maybe Mexicana, I'm not sure, but Mexico. But it would be interesting to see how we grow in that direction someday.
And so that is something that we could accommodate here from Canada with pre-clearance customs. They actually do one-up us a little bit. They have user fee customs there as well for general aviation.
Yes.
So.
Oh, all right. Commissioners, any other additional comments on the director's report?
I just have to know, were there any airport staff wearing airplane costumes? And are there any incriminating photos?
I don't believe so. We were all very professionally dressed in airport logo type gear for the most part. I was actually dressed just as I am today. So so they went above and beyond. There's probably incriminating photos of them, but not of airport staff.
Okay. All right. And Commissioner Maya?
Yeah. One question. Is there an update on the escalator in the terminal? Is it still under repair?
Thank you for that question. There is the escalator is still currently out of service. The motor has been removed by our contractor who keeps those up, and it is in the shop being rebuilt, I guess you would call it. And so we hope to have that back up as soon as possible.
All right. Vice Chair Glazier? Okay. Mo, any additional speaker comment cards? Yep. We're going to move on. Okay. To the consent calendar. I love the consent calendar. We have 4 items. The first one being the minutes, and then the next 3 being leases, Strathen and Montaigne's, Above All Aviation, and WOW Gear. And we usually vote on the consent calendar as a group. Do we have any public comments regarding the consent calendar? I do not think we do. Commissioners, any questions or clarifications on the consent items? All right.
I'll make one comment. I think having a flight school here is a valuable asset to
Yes.
the airport and the community and the aviation industry. So
I agree.
I would make a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
I'm looking for a second.
Second.
All right. The motion was made by Commissioner Miller and seconded by Vice Chair Glazier. I'm calling for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is unanimous. It did pass. Okay, the next item is administrative reports, and I'm once again going to call on Airport Director Hastert to talk about the proposed operating and capital budget for the mid-cycle fiscal year 2025.
Thank you, Chair Houghton, and I am going to pass it off to Jonathan Abad.
All right.
To go through the presentation, and I can assist him if there's any questions that you have.
Thank you.
I didn't say that on microphone, so I'm going to pass that off to Jonathan Abad to go through the presentation, and I'll be here for any questions that you may have.
Good evening, Chair Houghton and Airport Commission. My name is Jonathan Abad, Business Manager for the Airport Department, and I'm here to present and seek approval of the mid-cycle 2025, fiscal 2025 budget and changes to the fee schedule. And here we have the presentation outline. I'm going to start off with the Airport Department overview, followed by the fiscal 25 mid-cycle budget numbers, capital programs, and we're going to go over the proposed changes in rates and fees, operating reserve projections, and Airport Department Core 3. All right. Okay. The Airport Department is an enterprise fund. It means that we're self-supporting, no general fund. Revenues from tenant rent and user fees, FAA certified airport and regulated by the FAA and TSA to provide aircraft rescue and firefighting, ARF, that's maintenance and repair and law enforcement. And the Airport Department is organized into 11 programs in 5 divisions. We have the administration and business that handles finance and administration of the airport. Properties handles air services, marketing, parking, and property management. Certifications and operations handles the law enforcement, federal aviation regulation, and transportation security regulation compliances, and noise impacts and abatement. Oops, hold on a second here. Followed by the capital planning development that handles the planning, design, permitting, and construction of building and infrastructure. And we have the facilities division that handles the maintenance of the airport facilities and infrastructure. And here the department has 73 total full-time equivalents with 8 supervisors, 5 managers, and the airport director overseeing the 11 programs in 5 divisions. And the admin and business, there's 5 FTEs, which includes Director Chris Hastert and business manager. Properties includes 5 FTEs, headed by property manager John Feldhans, supervisor and staff. Certifications and operations has 35 full-time equivalents, half of it in law enforcement and security aids, and the other half in the operations. Plus, they include 9.91 full-time equivalent of fire personnel. This is provided by the fire department, not included in the 73 FTEs there. And we have the capital planning and development headed by development manager Sarah Isa and her staff, plus 3 engineering staff provided by the public works department, also not included in that airport FTE count. Facilities division has 26 FTEs headed by the facility manager Andrew Bermond, plus 2 additional FTEs provided by the information technology department, also not included in the FTE count. And as of February 2024, the Santa Barbara still leads the fastest seat recovery in Southern California Airport as compared to before the pandemic. And ending fiscal 2023, we ended up with another fiscal year record in annual passenger count, growing 14% from fiscal 22 to 23. We're projected to end this fiscal 24 with about 7% growth. And so we're conservatively projecting another 2% growth into fiscal 25. Okay, now for the budget numbers. The City of Santa Barbara does a biennial budgeting process. This involves the preparation and adoption of a budget spanning 2 years in this cycle. And we are presently in the mid-cycle review for the 2-year fiscal year 24 and 25 financial plan. And we're focusing on updates to the second year of the budget, second year's budget, which is fiscal 25. And these updates are based on revised projections based on the anticipated ending fiscal 24. Notable changes for fiscal 25 mid-cycle budget, it includes about $1.5 million in increase on operating revenues. This is to cover the about $1.9 million in increase in expenditure budget from last year's second year plan in the 2-year plan. Some updates to fee schedules and that we're going to go over, and about $594,000 in net increase to the capital programs, which we're going to go over as well. Okay, before we go over the numbers, I just want to explain to you how I'm going to go over what these columns mean. So we have the first column, which is the actuals ending fiscal 23, and followed by the second column there, that's the projection. So that's based on mid-year fiscal 2024. We updated our projections to how we're going to end this fiscal year 24. And the third column is the second year of the 2-year plan that was approved last year. And that fourth column is the recommended budget that we're asking you to approve. That's the mid-cycle budget. And then we have some comparisons there in percentages from 23 to 24, column 1 to column 2, 24 to 25, that's column 2 to 3, and the mid-cycle change from column 3 to column 4. Okay, now, start off, first row, we got the lease revenues. They're trending to end about 11% higher, ending fiscal 24 from fiscal 23, to which we're budgeting an 8% increase into fiscal 25. And with that, we increased the mid-cycle budget from the 2-year plan by 4% in that line. Interest and investment income, they come from the city's finance department. And there's a 58% increase there in the mid-cycle budget. The third line mainly consists of transfers, about $4 million is transferring between the funds, transfer in and out. In this case, transfers in. There's a $2.8 million PFC revenues in there, a $1 million CFC revenues. Changes mainly in the capital transfers of $594,000. That's where the mid-cycle change mainly is. So, as I mentioned, lease revenues are the highest, the biggest. Let me go back there. See, the biggest revenue that we get is from leases. And so in the next 4 pages here, I'm going to go over the 4 main lease types that we have in somewhat detail here. So starting with terminal revenues, there's no mid-cycle increase in parking, ground transportation, and advertising, which we're projecting a 10% increase from fiscal 24 to 25. 3% mid-cycle increase to rental cars. That's to reflect a 7% increase from 24 to 25. 8% increase to concessions. We're hopeful that there's going to be some upcoming renovations with the additional infusion of about over $400,000 that we've dispersed in ARPA concessions this fiscal year to help them meet this 8% increase of from 24 to 25. We have the TSA rent, which is probably going to go away, but we have it there for now. But I think TSA, it's that's LEO reimbursement. I'm sorry, law enforcement reimbursement. That's going to stay. Advertising is managed by Fuse, and it's projected to grow 22% into fiscal 24. And we're budgeting another 10% increase into fiscal 25. Next, we have, this is a second group of the lease. This is the commercial aviation revenues. And in here, we adjusted the fiscal 25 revenues by 2% from last year's second year plan, mainly due to the Delta Airlines starting next month. So they're bringing in a little additional revenue for additional space they're renting, and also there's a little bit of a increase in tenant, the commercial aviation terminal rents. Okay, and then next we have the third group, which is the commercial industrial leases. And in here, leases grew strong 14% from fiscal 23 to 24 due to a properties division's hard work in quickly turning over the vacancies, and which we plan this to continue into fiscal 25 with additional 13% increase. And sure. Sorry about that.
We have big plans for John.
Yeah. Lastly, we got the non-commercial aviation revenues expected to end fiscal 24 with a 5% increase from prior year and a mid-cycle budget increase of 4% for an anticipated increase of 2% from fiscal 24 to 25. Now combine all that in a pie. When you combine terminal and commercial aviation revenues, which makes up the airline-related revenues, it's at about 62%. And non-commercial aviation combined with the commercial industrial leases, the non-airline revenues, about 38% of all leases revenues. And now off to the expenses. Make it simple. We're just going to compare the second year of the 2-year plan with the recommended budget that we're asking to approve and the changes in dollars and percentage here. And as you know, salaries and benefits increased to $1.1 million at mid-cycle. This is mostly due to steep increases in group insurance and retirement benefits and anticipated increase in from an HR compensation study that's set to complete in the next couple of months. Water and electricity utility costs increase makes up most of the supplies and services line adjustment. $594,000 in increase in capital. And with that, there's a net $482,000 increase in transfers and mainly capital transfers. So that goes along together there. And here we have in a pie all our expenses. And this chart just shows the proportion of each of the costs of the airport's total operations, with salaries and benefits and supplies and services making up over half of the total expenses of the operating expenses in the airport. Okay, we're off to capital. Here's a list of recommended fiscal 25 budget for capital. And we're increasing capital by $594,000 in the mid-cycle budget. And then next 6 months, we actually are anticipating to get approval of the PFC reimbursement of about $4 million in prior and current airport portion of the FAA grants. This will allow us to replenish reserves and cuts, such as you can see there, we made some temporary cuts on the Southfield redevelopment phase 2. And also will allow funding for another ARF truck that is required with a recent index upgrade due to the larger commercial airlines that we've been getting. So okay, now we're off to, went too fast there, rates and fees changes. Starting with the airport parking, which we're increasing the hourly rates by $1 to $3 an hour, and a $3 increase in daily rates to all 3 lots. Overflow will now be $18, long-term parking to $21, short-term to $30 per day. Overall, we're still lower than the city's downtown parking rate maximum of $33 per day, and we're in line with their hourly rates. Although we're in a more expensive area, our new rates aren't as high as Burbank or LA, and we're more in line with Ontario airports. And so just to give you a little more information there. And these increases help us achieve the 10% projected increase in parking budget revenues. And next, we have the commercial ground transportation. For the prearranged rides like taxi, shuttle, bus, limo, and other courtesy vehicles, pickup and drop-off fees are proposed to increase 50 cents. Uber and Lyft, pickup and drop-off, also proposed to increase 50 cents up to $3.50. And that's right in line with our neighbor there in San Luis, what they have planned, and for their Uber and Lyft increases. Prearranged comparables, they're comparable with San Jose, Burbank, Palm Springs, and Fresno. And these rate increases will help us achieve the 10% ground transportation budget increase from fiscal 24 that we're planning. Just a slight cleanup on the new permit fees. I think we only had about 3 permits granted, and I think only about $2,000 in revenue, so not much activities in this new permitting program. Okay, now the multi-year operating reserves. The airport is budgeted in 7 distinct funds, and the operating fund, which is shown here, Fund 5700, is where the bulk of the operation runs through. And this is where we mainly track our operating reserves. The operating budget, as prepared for fiscal 25, is conservatively projected to bring us below policy reserve by almost $250,000, ending at fiscal 25. And we do have a couple of main balancing strategies to get out of that. PFC and parking. And as I mentioned to you, we hope to get approved for about $4 million in PFC funding in the next 6 months to keep us from going below that policy reserve ending fiscal 25. That's our short-term plan. And although we can't budget for this revenue yet until we get approval from the FAA. For our long-term balancing plan, longer term, we hope to complete the phase 2 of the Southfield redevelopment around maybe fiscal 26. This will net us about $1 million annually in savings and new revenues. And we'll add, the project will add hundreds of parking south of the terminal, which we will no longer need the costly 24-hour per day shuttle servicing to the overflow lot off of Hollister. And hopefully maybe we could get some revenue generating ideas for that lot as well. So the above policy reserve, as you can see there in a 5-year forecast, is projected to grow significantly over the next 5 years in this plan. However, we also have a large capital program need in the future that's largely unbudgeted, such as the terminal improvement, admin building relocation, just to name a couple of them, and upkeeping of old buildings and infrastructure. And while we can finance most of these projects, interest rates are very high, and so we're maximizing the use of FAA grants where applicable, and also planning on building as much as we can in reserves to minimize what we need to finance through loans. Okay, finally, we're going to go over the airport objective. CORE. CORE stands for City Outcomes Reaching for Excellence. It's a new program rolled out by the City of Santa Barbara last year for this year, fiscal 2024. It's to provide a more streamlined and meaningful approach to success measurement. And departments develop at least one goal for the pillars of a thriving workforce, organization, optimization, and innovation. Performance measurement that speaks directly to each goal will ensure that we're working towards achieving the outcomes that are being envisioned in the city's Vision 2030. So, starting with thriving workforce pillar, we developed a goal in the last year's 2-year plan to create a fulfilling working environment for everyone in Santa Barbara Airport by providing training and development opportunities. And this remains unchanged for the mid-cycle. Next pillar is the innovation pillar. That's created a goal to administer safe, secure, and efficient airport by developing and supporting world-class facilities that meet the community demand. And we do have one slight change here. The measurement for the safety procedure enhancement to identify at least one new safety measure following any workplace injury to be more proactive in preventing future injuries. Lastly, we got the organizational optimization, which we created a goal to respond to the needs and concern of the community by sustaining open and honest governance. And I'm happy to say that so far in fiscal 24, we're on track to achieving most of our goals here and measurements. And this concludes my presentation. I'd like to open up for questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abad. Commissioners, questions, clarifications, concerns? Commissioner Maya.
One question, actually two.
Yes.
Sorry, stand by. Oh, here it is. Back on slide 24, the fee changes eliminate daily activity fees on aviation, commercial, and non-commercial activity permits. Annual permits are unchanged. What type of activities are those? Could you give an example of what would fall under that category?
Well, so far, let's see. We've had helicopter tour that we've given a permit to. Let's see. Mr. Hester.
So it'd be like the independent operators, the sightseeing tours, things like that. In general, there's not a need to have a daily permit fee for those because those are businesses that want to sign up for an annual permit. And so to try to break that down into a daily fee isn't really appropriate for those types of activities.
So do they need a fee to operate if they're just here for one day, or could...
The amount of work that is required to get their insurance, get all of that, would be something that they would be looking to do for an annual permit. If it was a daily fee, that's more in line with like a special event, which we still have the ability to do. But if you're operating out of the airport as a business, that's not usually something that is a 1 or 2 day type of situation.
So has that category just been eliminated, or
Yes.
there's just no fee for it?
Just being eliminated.
It's being eliminated.
Yes.
You have to get an annual permit.
Correct.
Okay, understood. Yeah.
Vice Chair Glazier?
On that same slide, I was curious, why are we dropping a fee of 1%? I mean, it seems immaterial, but
It's just cleaning it up.
okay, just
Yeah.
rounding.
Rounding it up. Yeah, rounding it down, actually.
Okay. And then on slide 11, talking about the 25% decrease in the interest and investment income,
Yes.
what happened there? Just out of curiosity.
The investment, the increase.
Decrease.
I would say, yes. Yeah, interest investment income. You mean the drop from 23 to 24?
Correct.
I would have to look more into that. It probably has something to do with some lease. It might be like some GASB item that might be included in there. I'll have to
I
get
do know
back
that
to
the
you.
returns were lower back then, and I don't know exactly where the city has their funds invested in, but they're looking at ways to try to maximize the return on the city monies that are on deposit. And so I think these are numbers that Jonathan doesn't actually calculate. These are done by the city overall. But I think the goal is to try to bring in more in interest for the reserves that we have on file over in the future. And in the past, because it's a government agency with reserves, we have to be very careful and cautious with where those are invested. And so we have seen very low returns in the past, but they hope to increase that in the future.
Gotcha. And then on the next slide, on slide 12, talking about concessions, there was a drop there. I know we've talked a lot about increases in passenger counts and
Yes.
more people, more leases. Everything's been pretty rosy, and to see something like that down. Do you guys have any thoughts on why that might be, or what's causing that drop?
I actually reviewed that since the projection for 24 we developed in mid-year, and as you know, with these kind of revenues, it's reported like a month in arrear, and so I'm thinking it's got something to do because I looked at the numbers again right around now, and we're tracking to just go over last year's. It's not a decrease, but as far as I don't remember yet. I realized. I mean, we've had some turnover with the roasting company. I remember they were having some problems sourcing some coffee. I don't know if that would make a difference, but yeah, yeah. But I can't think of much more as to why. But hopefully, we got an additional infusion there from the ARPA concessions, and I heard they're going to be adding some more food types that they didn't have before, and yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Commissioners?
Couple questions. You mentioned a new ARF vehicle. That's my recollection. Those are usually a few $1 million.
Yes, sir.
And is that partially funded by grants, or is that all?
It's not in the
airport-funded?
budget right now. We are hoping to apply for PFC funding for that. We have a lot of projects for the FAA grants, and so we really didn't have room for the trucks. So it's about $1.3 million we're estimating, part of maybe $4 or $5 million that we're going to be applying for the PFC this year.
Mhm.
So it is grant eligible, and we would normally receive 90% funding for that. In this case, because we have so many projects, as Mr. Abad mentioned, we don't want to bump one of the other projects to allow us to purchase that ARF truck. So because we have increased passengers coming in and out of the airport, we have an excess in the passenger facility charge. So we are going to use those funds to pay for that, which is that $4.50 that is charged to the outbound passengers.
Okay. And does the FAA have a time limit on how soon after you've indexed up you need to get that equipment?
I'm seeing a shaking of head from a former operations supervisor. We currently meet the requirement. The problem is the backup ARF unit is very old and requires a lot of maintenance to keep it going and won't be reliable for the future. So we are able to meet that requirement currently, but this will provide us much more stability in not having to note them out that we don't have current ARF service available, which could affect flights coming into the airport.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. And then I think lastly on 13 regarding the reserves, well, it's not a significant variance. Does the city typically have a concern with being below policy reserves?
Yes, as long as we have a plan to get out of that below policy, which we have a short and a long-term plan on it. So we're confident that it's going to get approved.
Okay.
And if I might add to that, our goal, and what is being relayed to me even through the city management, is especially for an enterprise fund that has a lot of capital intense programs in place and a lot of projects that need to move forward, we don't want to be far above the reserve. So the goal is to be as close to the reserve as possible because you're doing those capital projects and reinvesting that into the airport.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any additional comments or questions? I think the only question I might have, or I'm just curious, what does the shuttle to the long-term parking lot cost us per year?
Yes, that's the shuttle to the overflow.
Yes.
Yes, it's about $700,000.
Wow.
It's quite a bit, and
Yeah.
it might even be closer to $800,000 this year actually. So we're trying to find ways to alternative.
And the 400 spots moving to the south field should really take care of our parking issues for now.
So there's two things that might happen with that, Chair Houghton, and one of them is with phase 1 of the Southfield redevelopment, that will open up some potential spots for some employee parking. And so Mr. Abad has been really pushing me and John to make that move, but we're doing one step at a time. We are hopeful that that will reduce the shuttle cost some, because we won't have to have as many shuttles running if we're not also transporting all of the terminal employee parking, or excuse me, terminal employees from that remote lot over to the terminal as well. So that'll be a shorter term fix. And then the addition of the 400 plus spots will hopefully eliminate that, or at least significantly reduce it.
Right. Yeah, when I think about parking, I think that most commercial air customers do some calculus, and they think, Santa Barbara or LAX, what's the Airbus cost these days? $60 one way. Okay. But lax parking, if I drive, is $40 or $50 per day. So these dollars matter,
Yes.
and so any way we can find a way to knock a dollar off is a good thing. But I also realize the importance of us improving our own parking facilities here, and so those monies are needed. But I always like to caution staff, if there is a way to trim a buck here, that is definitely part of a person's calculus. It's a 10-day trip, and if do I Uber to the airport? Do I drive? Is it going to be full? It's actually one of the few calculations that most people go through when they can easily factor parking. So.
If I might add to that, it's also a factor in how we look at rates, because we obviously want to maximize revenue to the airport, but we don't want to price ourselves out of what is realistic. But at the same time, if you have rates that are too low, our parking lot, because people make those calculations, they won't be taking that Uber or something, and we run the risk of not having available parking as well.
Right. Yeah, I saw the sign today, space limited. So it's a reminder. So.
One other question about parking. I know in years past we've had an issue where short-term parking was filling up, and so people were using short-term parking as long-term parking and sort of just eating the increase. Is that still an issue, and how does that factor into the disparity in pricing between those two classes of parking?
Thank you, Commissioner Meyer. That is definitely still an issue. With this community, people are willing to pay even more just to be that much closer to the terminal. So that does factor into the pricing, and obviously we don't want to go too high on the short term either. But we have also made other adjustments to limit the use of the short term for terminal type functions, things like that, to allow for more spaces in that lot. But it does fill up fairly regularly.
Okay, commissioners, any additional questions or comments? Well, then I'm going to ask for a motion to accept the proposed operating capital budget for mid-cycle fiscal year 2025. Which commissioner would like the honor?
I'd make a motion that we recommend approval of the proposed mid-cycle fiscal year 2025 airport operating capital budget.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. So Commissioner Miller made the motion, and it was seconded by Vice Chair Glazier. And I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. It is unanimous. Passed. Okay, and our last item on the agenda, item number 11, the T-Hanger license agreement updates. I've enjoyed watching airport staff work through this. I was very impressed by the T-Hanger group that thought about this and provided us a letter of their concerns. And I have to commend staff for your diligence in following up with these requests. And it looks like you really worked on finding ways where you could improve efficiencies. So I'm going to call on Director Hastert to discuss the T-Hanger license agreement updates.
Thank you, Chair Houghton. As you mentioned, we did receive a letter from the T-Hanger tenants, and I'm actually very pleased that they sent that, because it caused me to take a little bit of extra time to fully understand how our T-Hanger license agreements are structured. and go over that with staff, especially with the new property manager coming in, who also very much assisted in this process to review what we currently had out there. So initially we took that letter, and that letter called for a couple of different things. One of them is a reduction in our hangar rates due to the fact that the debt service is paid off. And then some minor adjustments that are just inconvenient had to do with the security deposit adjustment coinciding with the annual CPI adjustment. And so when I first approached my staff to look at what we should have the hangar rate set at, it became quickly evident that we don't really have a standardized system for all of the rates out there. So to adequately address their request to reduce it by the amount that they had because of the debt service isn't something I felt comfortable bringing forward until we do a much better rate study for all of our rates on the airport, so we make sure we're consistent, not necessarily to compare what are our hangar rates compared to Signature or Atlantic, but mostly to compare what are our rates that we're charging to T-hangar tenants, what are our rates that we're charging to our commercial tenants with maintenance facilities or flight schools, what are the rates that we're charging to the FBOs, to make sure that if we do recommend a decrease, which I don't know that we will, but if we do, that it's something that is justified and we can defend as this is the appropriate action to take, that isn't singling out one group and giving them a benefit over other groups when we have to maintain the whole airport. So I will say that this letter does not, or this recommended action does not address the request to reduce the rents. But in looking at all of the issues surrounding the license agreements and consistencies, we did decide, rather than wait, that we will bring forward the recommendations that we have before us tonight, which I will go through in a little bit more detail, to clean up and standardize our license agreements for the T-hangar tenants, as well as set the stage for us to do that further study and bring back a recommendation for this commission if appropriate. So when we looked at the different areas concerning the license agreements, I broke it down into the 4 recommendations that we have here, and we would recommend approval of all 4, but any of them can go forward without approval of a different one if you have different thoughts about that. The first was our annual increase for the consumer price index, the CPI increase. Currently, if a tenant signs up at a different time than another tenant, which happens very regularly, that CPI increase is tied to the anniversary of when they executed the lease. So we have potentially 24 different dates that our staff is going through, looking at what the CPI index is for that specific hangar, sending out the letters for that specific hangar, all of that. So the recommendation would be to go to an annual CPI increase effective July 1st, which is the beginning of our fiscal year, for all 24 hangars, all at the same time, to make it consistent. So let me back up just one step. This is something that we have 4 recommendations, and in order to move forward with these, if that is the direction of the commission, we would have to do a license amendment for all of these to go into effect. So the decisions that are made tonight will affect future T-hangar leases, but we would also provide the option for the current T-hangar tenants to amend their lease, their license agreement. They could stay exactly as is right now. That's the agreement that we have in place with them. I think that most, if not all, would probably come to us to seek to amend to the newer strategies, just for consistency on their part as well. But it's not something that we anticipate forcing on the existing tenants. With that, I did have a meeting with 2 of the T-hangar tenants that are coordinating communications with the larger group, and I'd hoped that a couple of them would have been here tonight to discuss, but I think the meeting, in my opinion, went very well, and they are in agreement that these are all steps in the right direction, but they're anxiously looking forward to that rate study and see where that might end up. They did have a recommendation, and that recommendation would be to add to recommendation number 1 to implement a standardized process for annual consumer price index adjustment to the rental rates for all city T-hangars effective July 1st of each year beginning 2025, regardless of the original execution date of the agreement, and elimination of the floor of what is in the current agreement, which is if the CPI came out less than 3%, it has a floor of 3% right now. And so if that is the direction of the commission, staff has no objection to that if you want to add that to a recommendation. It does, their point, and I agree with it, is that if the CPI over various years is 1-point-something% and we're collecting 3% every time, that rate will over time become too high. And then we'll be doing another rate study to see where we should set those rates again. Number 2 is to eliminate the security deposit adjustment, simplifying administrative processes and reducing workload. So right now, in addition to doing the CPI increase for the hangar rental rate, we also apply that to their security deposit that is on file. And the amount of money that changes the security deposit versus the liability that we have if a tenant were to stop paying rent or something like that is so low that we're recommending, just for efficiencies, that we just keep the security deposit on file as established when they established the license agreement and not increase that with every CPI increase. The third item would be to transition all city T hangar rates to a cost per square foot methodology, initially set at 0.9375 cents per square foot, which is, 0.9375, which is based on the current lowest T hangar rental amount, ensuring fairness and consistency across all rental units. One of the things that we looked at is, depending on when somebody signed up and when their CPI increases happened, we have a huge range, and you can see in the letter, goes from that 93.75 up to over $1 per square foot, depending on which hangar you're in, when you signed up. So to standardize it on a price per square foot, there will be a couple of hangars that are more expensive than others because they're 1,070 square feet instead of 1,050 square feet. But across the board, they would all be the same rate because they are all very similar hangars. We could have gone with a different methodology, like we are going to do an average of what they are paying out there, or we'll go with the top of what they're paying out there. But out of fairness to the tenants and their request, I think that the approach of selecting the lowest price per square foot currently out there is a fair methodology to take. It will result in a couple of hangars that will not see any change to their hangar rate, and several that will see a slight decrease because of the variety of rates that are out there. And then fourth is to update the utility section of the agreement to also include reimbursement of water. So currently it is limited to just electrical charges, and we do have separate meters specific to the hangars. And so the water serves the suppression system for fires. It also serves the bathroom that is over there. In looking at the bill, there's not a lot of water that is used, but as you're familiar with home or business, there's a minimum charge for the meter connection to have that service. So it comes out to $128 a month. It's not a lot, and that's spread across 24 hangars, but we still think that it should be included into that for recovery, because we are not going to be looking at recovering utility charges as we look at the methodology for where that rate should be set. So with that, I took all of 2023's bills for electricity and water, and currently we are subsidizing that as the city at about $2,530 a year. If we adjust from $10 per month surcharge up to $18 a month for the utilities, we will still be subsidizing it based on the 2023 year of about $226, but without getting into cents, just rounding it to the nearest dollar. I didn't want to recommend anything that would provide a surplus to the city when it comes to reimbursement of electrical. And this is something that we plan to review every year now to recommend adjustments as needed, up or down.
A lot of calculations going on here. Commissioners, any questions or clarifications based on Director Hastert's presentation on T-hangers? Commissioner Maya.
This is remarkable. I thank you all for doing this. I've remember when that letter was sent in by the T-hanger tenants, and I think you've addressed this thoroughly and expeditiously, and look forward to the final result of this. But I think this is an important milestone, and it shows your commitment. And this isn't a big deal for the airport, but it's a big deal to the people that it affects. And so I think addressing this so quickly and so efficiently and coming up with such a well-rounded plan reflects on your commitment to the community as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
In their original request, they asked for relief from some of the burden of their monthly lease fees due to the debt service being paid off. How does that factor into any of this? Since I see that some of them are seeing some of the tenants are seeing a reduction, but not all of them.
Thank you, Commissioner Maya. As I mentioned in the beginning, this is not designed to address their request for the reduced rate as it relates to that debt service. We have to do some further look into that, and that is something that we do plan to move forward with fairly quickly.
Okay.
Not waiting all the way until next year to start looking at that. But it's going to require a much broader look at all of the rates on the airport, not just the T-hangar rates, to make sure we're consistent with how we're setting the rates for all of general aviation on the airport.
Okay. I did hear you say that at the beginning, but it wasn't all clicking until this all came together. So that makes sense. So there's a possibility after you do that, I think you said, for this number to either go up or down slightly, depending on that, on
that
the
is
results
correct.
of that study.
And I can tell you that just on an initial look,
Yeah.
we are on the high side for a
Okay.
lot of airports that are out there. What that means as far as how we set our rates here compared to our expenses and overall running the airport, the capital projects, all of that, I can't tell you if that would come in with a recommendation for a lower rate.
Mhm.
I don't anticipate that it would come back with a higher rate.
Okay, very good. Well, that makes good sense. Thanks.
Commissioners, additional comments?
I'll just say I'm impressed by the amount of kind of administrative overhead that you've been able to trim out of the
Yes.
process. I hope other processes get kind of some review to see if there's ways to simplify things. Thanks.
Vice Chair Glazer? Okay, I'm going to ask for a motion, but I'd like the motion to include in this item 1 that there is not a floor required. I think that was one of the efficiencies you were looking to obtain with this.
So that was the request of the hangar group, and I have no opposition to that, just because it could potentially ratchet that rate up higher than it needs to be based on the CPI increases.
So I'm looking for a motion that
Right.
would include that. Commissioner Maya?
I'll make that motion. I move that the Airport Commission accept the administrative report and recommend that staff move forward with the plan for the T-hangars with the addition of language to number 1, eliminating a floor of 3% for the annual CPI increase for the hangar, allowing that to reflect the actual CPI.
You know what? I apologize,
Yeah.
but I failed to check with Mo to see if there's any public comment or request to speak forms.
Oh, before we move forward.
I also made the same mistake in the previous one. I'm going to come back to that and ask that question for number 9. Yes.
I think you're good.
Are you gonna do that floor for all the tenants across the board here at this airport?
So our goal, and I know we're not supposed to directly address public comment, but as a part of this process that I should have stated is our goal is to standardize all of our leases and license agreements, including the security deposit language, how we do business here at the airport. So to indirectly answer the question, yes.
Oh, sorry, and then my other question was on the previous thing about annual or fees, the daily fees. My concern is that will become a loophole for independents saying, oh, I was just here for a day, so I'm addressing that as well. That's it.
Thank you. Again, my apologies for skipping that public comment point on number 10. So I don't know if I need to request a new motion for the previous one. I should do that when I come back.
So if you're talking about the budget item,
Yes.
so I guess you could ask if there is any public comment, and then depending on that answer, you could.
And we
Decide
just
to read.
received public comment on that. So any additional comment? Okay. All right, I'm going to go back to 10 then. I think we've addressed number 9. Okay, so Commissioner Maya, you to make a motion.
On 11?
on 11.
Okay. Yeah, so we have my motion on the floor for accepting the recommendation moving forward with the elimination of the floor of 3% for the CPI increase for T-hanger lease rental fees.
Second.
Okay. Did that motion also include that baseline? Did you?
Yes, yeah, I can restate it if you'd like. So really testing me here, Dennis, huh?
Sorry.
I make a motion that the Airport Commission accept staff's recommendation to move forward with a plan to standardize the T-hanger license agreements, and in that amending number 1 to eliminate language to eliminate the consumer price increase floor of 3%, so that that period.
Okay. All right. I'm going to ask once again to keep this in order. No public comments received, correct? And I'm going to ask, I'm sorry, I'm going to call for a vote. Commission, do we have a second?
Second.
By Vice Chair Glazier. Okay, I'm calling for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is unanimous. And the motion did pass. And I believe I'm up to date on 9 and 10. I'm sorry, 10 and 11.
I think we're good.
Okay. I'm going to adjourn the meeting at 7:01 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.